Please welcome to the stage President Bill Clinton, 42nd President of the United States, founder and board chair, Clinton Foundation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here in San Juan to continue our work with the CGI Action Network on post-disaster recovery. I am delighted that Hillary and I could both be here to welcome you and to participate in this. And I'm looking forward to today and tomorrow. I want to thank the government officials who are here or who will be here, including Governor Rosselló, Prime Minister Motley, Governor Bryant, Minister Barron, all the Puerto Rican mayors who are here, and Mayor Cruz, who will be welcoming us back to San Juan. The resident commissioner, Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, was supposed to be here and missed her plane. I'm just glad the airports are safe in America again. But she has been very good to work with and worked very hard in Washington to protect the money that has been approved for Puerto Rico. So I want to thank her. I'd like to thank all the delegation members, the supporters of our foundation who have come, who are here, and the sponsors, including IBM, InterEnergy, the Puerto Rico Manufacturers Association, Swiss Re, Banco Popular, First Bank, Pfizer, and Grupo Ferro-Rangel. This is the third working meeting we've had since we established this action network a year ago, almost exactly a year ago today. We've had 18 commitments to action already in progress or completed. Almost 40 more will be added surrounding this meeting. Meanwhile, a lot of other people have been at work. I want to say a special word of thanks to Luis Miranda and his son Lin-Manuel, his mother Luz, and his wife Vanessa. Thank you, Luis, for being here. Hillary and I and our delegation were able to go a couple of nights ago to see Hamilton in Puerto Rico and see the whole staff wrapped in Puerto Rican flags. It was only my third time seeing it. It was Hillary's fourth time. But I think it's the best we've seen. And it's astonishing what they have done. The millions and millions of dollars they have raised for people in Puerto Rico and the projects that are being supported. I thank them for that very much. I also want to thank all the people who were involved in the medical supplies that were brought down, some 30,000 tons by Jan Soderberg and others. He's here, and this brings our total, the CGI community's contribution to medical supplies to about 100,000 tons. And I've been really impressed by the way it was done, because we tried to talk to people here and only bring what was needed and would be used and could be properly distributed in a timely and efficient way. So thank you very much. One of the things that will come out of this action network when fully funded is about $8 million in green construction and building, renovation of nearly 200 community facilities, 130 of them with a solar component. So I'm feeling pretty good about where we are, but we've got a long way to go. Since we launched the Action Network, we brought together more than 650 organizations with the common goal of helping Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and their Caribbean neighbors, particularly Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, Among other things, the network has rebuilt homes and schools in Dominica, transitioned primary care clinics in Puerto Rico to solar power, and enabled every school child in the U.S. Virgin Islands to get vision, hearing, and dental screenings for the first time after the hurricane. At this meeting, we have more than 550 individuals from almost 400 organizations. 48% of you are here for the first time. The good news is that 52% were here before too, so I thank both groups. 15 months after Hurricanes Maria and Irma, our work is far from over. And it's easy to lose sight of that in today's current environment where there's something new, exciting, or distressing on the news every day. But the challenges involved in rebuilding a place and leaving it in better shape than it was before a storm like this are not met in a day or two, and are not for those with short attention spans. So I'm very grateful for those of you who are here 15 months later and who will be here 15 months from now, or as long as it takes to make our communities safer, stronger, more prosperous, inclusive, and more resilient. One of the things that a storm of this magnitude does is not only to create its own problems from destruction, but to lay bare and make more acute already existing challenges. We have seen that. Among those things that have been made more clear are persistent high unemployment among young people and the urgent need for more renewable and affordable energy. Maria had a devastating effect on small businesses, infrastructure, tourism. Thousands of small businesses were closed. Many, many thousands of people left Puerto Rico. Historically, about 40% of all the small businesses who close in the aftermath of a disaster like this do not reopen. Many schools remain closed. Access to health care remains a challenge. And in terms of mental health and other challenges, many people are still traumatized by what they went through and without the necessary support to fully deal with it. We have also seen, I might say, and you'll see today, the incredible strength and resilience of people throughout the region. People working together to help their neighbors. We've already seen success from the commitments to action already made. Yesterday, our group visited a few of the sites where commitments are being implemented to speak with small farmers, fishermen, local business owners who are making their work more sustainable, more profitable, and more future-oriented. We went to one group of small businesses in Humacao that sustained significant damages. Our partner, the Foundation for Puerto Rico, has installed new solar lights there to make the shopping center safer and more attractive, and the lights are removable so that in the event of another storm, they can be removed and temporarily stored rather than destroyed. We also had the chance to visit a nursery, part of a program that aims to rebuild the vital ecosystems decimated by Maria. Para la Naturaleza has built 5 nurseries. Yeah, 5. Give them a hand. With a goal of planting more than 750,000 trees over the next 7 years. At the nursery we visited, they've grown about 20,000 saplings and 28 types of trees with the help of community volunteer groups and local school children. Our visits yesterday reinforced one thing we already knew. Our most successful endeavors include partnerships with local communities and organizations who tell us where we should be focusing our efforts. We have to continue this. I am very grateful to all of you who've already made commitments or will do so. If you haven't done it, I hope you will today. We will leave here with more than 50 commitments in total, and I'm encouraged about what we can do. Because CGI is more about taking action than talking, we're going to get started before our plenary with some more commitment announcements. One of the things that is interesting, as I said, is that a storm like this not only reveals damage that is self-evident, but pulls the cover off problems that are long simmering. The first commitment we're announcing is one by Direct Relief International to address a public health crisis that those of us who live on the mainland deal with every day. There is a growing opioid epidemic in Puerto Rico, which has worsened in the aftermath of the hurricanes. This commitment is a perfect example of the partnership model that is fundamental to this action network, bringing together organizations from the corporate, nonprofit, and government sectors and community groups and individuals. So I'd like to invite to the stage the participants in this announcement. Sister Rosemarie Gonzalez of Hogar del Buen Pastor, along with her compatriots, Sister Marie Benitez and Jose Benitez. And I'd like to invite from Direct Relief, Andrew McCullough, Yvonne Rodriguez-Wiwal, Luis David Rodriguez, and Jennifer Farrington from Becton Dickinson, Alicia Suarez from the Primary Care Association of Puerto Rico, and Maria Rodriguez of the Comprehensive Health Council of Louisa. Let's give them a big hand. According to the Associated Press, recent data shows that more than 600 fentanyl-related overdoses and 60 deaths were reported in Puerto Rico in 2017, up from 200 overdoses and 8 deaths the previous year. Evidence from healthcare providers suggests these official numbers may be significantly understating the reality. There's a large gap in terms of data that can accurately characterize the problem or inform public health officials. After Hurricane Maria, Direct Relief provided nearly $10 million in donated naloxone, the opioid overdose reversal drug, to healthcare partners on the island, and we thank them for that. Today, Direct Relief, along with leaders from the private sector and Puerto Rican community organizations, are committing to expand and deepen their efforts through a three-pronged approach. First, Direct Relief will fund research designed to give us a truly accurate picture of the prevalence and severity of opioid dependence. Second, they will ensure the safety of individuals with substance abuse disorders through in-kind donations of critical medications and supplies. In particular, Direct Relief will provide healthcare partners and organizations with a reliable source of naloxone, as well as syringes, gauze, and other materials necessary for harm reduction. Finally, Direct Relief will provide support to local organizations like Hogar del Buen Pastor, who work with individuals with substance abuse disorders to enable them to strengthen their work, reach more people, and do more good with recovery programs, psychosocial support, housing, and other services. To tell you a little more about the importance of this work, I want to introduce someone who's been doing this for 25 years or more. Sister Rosemarie Gonzalez is the founder and executive director of Hogar del Buen Pastor. It's a transitional home that offers a 5-point recovery program, including psychological support and vocational training to people suffering from substance addiction. She founded her organization in 1993 and today houses more than 60 residents. Sister Rosemary.
I'm not too used to being in front of such a beautiful crowd, right? I just want to thank President Clinton and Secretary Clinton and the Clinton Global Initiative and this platform and Direct Relief for your commitment to Puerto Rico. It is really touching to have people who care so much that they're willing to give the support that is needed so much for those who are suffering daily and who are trying to begin a new life. The homeless substance abuse problem in Puerto Rico has been very great for many years now, and has just kept growing each year more. And with the coming of Maria, we're told that there has been a triple increase. And I know that to be true from seeing the results of the different mixtures in the drug substances, especially with the fentanyl and others that people don't even know, the users don't even know that that's what they're consuming. We recently saw one of the residents who had been in our home die from an overdose, and that has just become such an increasing situation, which we hope to try to attend to in a better way each day. To respond to this from the beginning, we began 25 years, going to be 26 years now in February, with a transitional home. And in the transitional home, it was I wanted it to be a different type of program. It's one based on community and a therapeutic faith community, actually, where the residents themselves are the most important people that help each other to go forward and to be able to break with the addiction and to go and be able to integrate themselves into society. So our program is based on a holistic view where we attend to the emotional, physical, spiritual, economical, everything that makes a person be that person that God wants them to be. And in this holistic view, we begin with detox for those who are in need of it, which is most of them. And the detox is with natural products and acupuncture. And it has been a very good thing and helped very many because, first of all, it can be used with any drug, and even women who are pregnant can use that process and be successful in breaking with that the dependence on the drug. In the program, besides that, which is something very different from most of the programs here, at least on the island, is based on like a regular life situation where they have on-the-job trainings, which help them to get ready to be able to have employment and to be able to live within society in a responsible way. Through the different on-the-job trainings, we have 3 micro businesses, and the residents are the ones that run it with the help of others. And they receive an incentive for that, for the training. That incentive they save so that when they finish the program, they can then have something with which to buy their furniture, buy the things that they need in the home. They don't just go to 4 walls and then have to try to see where they can get money to sustain themselves. They've worked for that through these job trainings. And in the job training, we see their growth in responsibility, in working with each other, in being able to follow directives and to deal with disagreements, etc. Besides that, they have other meetings, such as NA meetings, AA meetings, and values. They also have seminars which are based on life skills, such as management and of anger and healing. And all these things help them, plus other things, psychological help, etc., to become that person that God has made them to become and what they want to be free of the terrible slavery of drugs. And they express it that way. They express that it's a hell for them, and that it is just to be liberated from them, to be able to live once again as a normal human being is very important. The support, when they finish with the program, they will also have found an employment and a living place so that they can then begin their lives completely with everything in order, and they also have the possibility for any follow-up help that they might need. So, but it is a tremendous need that we have here, and as I said, each year it seems to have been growing more, and now with the added danger of these mixtures, it has become a great problem. So we really are so appreciative of the help that is being offered to us, and it's going to help us to be able to expand, expand in the services, and to look for better ways, more profound ways of helping them to overcome these situations which they so much desire to overcome. We also want to invite you. We can use much more help in many different ways, especially volunteers. We have the possibility of different ways in which people who like to offer their talents and offer their time. So that's one of the things that we throw out to you, if any of you would like to join in the battle with us, we'd be really appreciative, because the need is great. The need is really great. There are other ways in which we need help to help us in, for instance, activities that we might have. There are just many ways that can be done. So I know you're here because you have to heart this problem of the homeless and addictive behavior. And I just know that we can count on each and every one of you to help in your own way, and to help us help the island become a safer, a better, and that enchanted island which we are, we continue to be, and we want to be even more. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your support.
I think we have we're going to take a picture of this. The next commitment is made by IBM, so I'd like to ask Bob Lord to come to the stage. There you go. Let's give him a hand. This is good. Each year, natural disasters kill 90,000 people and affect nearly 160 million worldwide. In 2018, natural disasters resulted in an estimated $155 billion in economic loss. All those numbers are probably understated, by the way. While we know technology can help communities prepare for and recover from natural disasters, there's significant untapped potential in young people who could help develop the technologies to do more. Due to a skills shortage in the technology sector, there could be more than 5 million jobs unfilled by 2020, costing the economy approximately $160 billion a year. In partnership with the Clinton Global Initiative University, IBM will host both in-person and virtual codeathons on university campuses, specifically addressing technology needs around natural disaster preparedness and response. Through the commitment, IBM will engage more than 5,000 students globally by the end of this year. Students will harness modern, emerging, and open-source technologies. In addition to the codeathons, students will also participate in coding challenges, with the winning team receiving implementation support from the IBM Corporate Services Corporation. Winners will also have the opportunity to participate in CGIU's annual meeting to raise the profile of effective natural disaster response and resilience efforts around the world. IBM is looking to partner with natural disaster subject matter experts, so a lot of you here can help. They want you to provide a unique insight into how technology can solve the challenges faced by first responders and community leaders. So, let's give IBM and Mr. Lord a big hand, and some of you should volunteer to help. Thank you. And the final commitment I would like to invite to the stage Howard Sherman, the CEO of Good 360, Jose Aramis of the UPS Foundation, and the UPS Caribbean GEO Country Manager, Susie Cabo, United Managing Director, Corporate and Community Affairs, Rico Wilcox, All Hands and Hearts, Smart Response, the Director of U.S. Recovery, and Andrea M. Picotto of Wrangler Lee. Thank you. In 2017, the hurricane season prompted significant and immediate philanthropic donations, including those from many Fortune 500 organizations. Unfortunately, studies show that 60% of unsolicited goods given after disaster ultimately end up in landfills. Furthermore, 70% of giving occurs within the 2 months immediately after the disaster, and only 5% is allocated to reconstruction and recovery. These statistics show us there's a misalignment between how and when corporations contribute to disaster response and recovery needs. Often the real needs of a community are not determined until weeks or even months after a disaster, and full recovery can last on average 5 years or more. To better align donations and the needs of the recovery, Goodwill 360, All Hands and Hearts, and the Good 360 Disaster Recovery Council, which includes UPS Foundation, United Airlines, Restoration Hardware, CVS Health, Ecolab, Dollar Days, and Wrangler, commit to educating leaders at 25 top Fortune 500 companies so that we can do better in adopting a needs-based, resilient, and transparent long-term approach to disaster giving. Good 360 and partners will develop a curriculum, host advisory sessions to help companies give thoughtfully and purposefully. Companies will be asked to pledge to incorporate the following strategies into their giving, including actively ensuring plans are in place before disaster strikes, employing a needs-based approach by utilizing Good 360 and other response partners to determine community needs, educate companies, associates, colleagues, consumers, and the public at large on how to better respond. To monitor the results of the initiative, Good 360 will measure the progress of pledges and their impact, looking at key metrics such as the percent of donations given toward long-term recovery efforts and the amount of unused donations given within the first few weeks of a disaster. Based upon their findings, Goodwill 360 will continue to update and tailor the curriculum. They're looking for additional corporations to make the pledge, to commit to incorporating strategies that will actually work. Good for them. Let's give them a hand. And now, it is time for the first panel.
The Center for Disaster Philanthropy is a nonprofit organization that really was designed to meet the needs of private philanthropy to be more effective in their disaster grant making. We really believe that we can't do our work without like-minded individuals and organizations who are doing the recovery, supporting the recovery, evaluating the recovery, that we can pick up the phone to share information, ask to share networks, and for the Center for Disaster Philanthropy to be involved with CGI, it means that there was a very literal space to do that information sharing and network sharing in a way that we found to be incredibly helpful. And we're really proud to say that a number of our grantees really did coincide with those partnerships of CGI. First is AmeriCares and the work that they're doing to promote mental and physical health. NetHope, who is working tirelessly to build organizational capacity of nonprofits on the ground, as well as connectivity in the IT space. The Solar Foundation that's working to bring resilient energy and lighting resources across Puerto Rico. And then lastly, the International Medical Corps and their efforts, both in Puerto Rico as well as in the U.S. Virgin Islands, focused on public health as well as mental health needs. Long-term recovery is difficult, it is complicated, it is time-intensive. Being able to work in partnership and in collaboration, both with CGI as well as the participants of CGI, make that work feel easier and feel more collaborative, with certainly the hope that that collaboration will result in greater success in a shorter amount of time.
Please welcome our panelists. President Bill Clinton, 42nd President of the United States, founder and board chair, Clinton Foundation. Patricia Scotland, Secretary General, the Commonwealth of Nations. Jose Andres, chef and activist, World Central Kitchen. Mark Okerstrom, President and CEO, Expedia Group. Minister Francine Barron, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, Commonwealth of Dominica.
So, this is a good panel. I would like to start with Jose Andres, because we went together yesterday to one of his suppliers, a young farm couple who were attempting to take a very small farm and use the most up-to-date technology to produce the maximum number of different products at high quality. So, since this happened, this storm, your organization has provided in Puerto Rico alone more than 3.4 million meals with the help of more than 19,000 volunteers. That's pretty impressive. So, here's what I want you to explain, because it really is important to what we were just talking about in the last commitment. How have you turned your efforts from a short-term response to a disaster when everybody's heartstrings were pulled into a long-term effort? And what advice would you give to others who would like to do the same thing?
So, Mr. President, we came for 5-6 days. I told my wife, we're coming 6-7 days. Let's see what's the situation, and let's try to help, like we always do. Few thousand meals here and there, leave some money behind, and go back home. But when Nate Mook, the executive director of World Central Kitchen, and myself, we arrived, we saw that really the hurricane was very, very destructive, even beyond what we were watching on TV. And at the end, we began getting phone calls from hospitals, from elderly homes, and we kept cooking. We didn't plan, we didn't meet, we only kept responding to the needs we saw. And as we kept feeding people, the plan happened in front of us. So we went from 1 kitchen the first day to 26 kitchens. At one moment, we were operating 18 kitchens around the island at once. We went from 1,000 meals to one day we reached 150,000 meals delivered in over 750, 800 points around the island. We went from 20 friends the first day to more than 19, 20,000 volunteers who are the ones that make that happen. At the end, we only were trying to solve the short-term issues. In the process, we were trying to feed an island. We didn't feed everybody we wanted, but at least we were able to reach the weakest link of our communities, the people, the elderly, the hospitals, the communities that were forgotten. So sometimes, yes, you can plan, and we should plan, and I want to thank you for this amazing initiative to bring in everybody together, President, and really putting us all together, thinking how together we can take care of things in the future. But sometimes the best plan is just to show up and start doing. Sometimes in our case was less meetings and more doing. And sometimes it's moving people away from the room and putting them on the ground where people need your help. That's what we did.
I have to say it's to make full disclosure here. We've been friends a long time and we all do things together, but while he was down here doing this, getting ready, he had a mobile kitchen in the parking lot of my library in Arkansas to feed the furloughed federal workers and the laid off contract workers right before the government shutdown ended. But the reason I wanted to ask him to begin is, a lot of times people think, well, I'm not him, I don't have a big international reputation as a cook and all that, as a chef, but what he really does is he just goes someplace and asks for help, and they build partnerships. And we'll talk more about it in the second round of questions in terms of longer term, but I think it's important for everybody who thinks, well, I could not do anything to make a difference. Yes, you could. Everybody's got some contacts. Everybody's got some expertise. Everybody's got something you do. And it's amazing if you just make it easy for people to help. And I think your great genius is you make it easy for people to help. You make people want to help.
Yeah, but people like you and Secretary Clinton also inspire people like me to serve, President. Very quickly, in 1995, you came to DC Central Kitchen in Washington, D.C. to volunteer, and you kept coming year after year with Mrs. Clinton. Robert Egger, the founder of this amazing soup kitchen that trains homeless and ex-convicts and feeds 9,000 people a day, he told me very early that seems that charity is about the redemption of the giver, when charities should be about the liberation of the receiver. Everything we do forward, we need to liberate the receiver. If only serves the purpose of the ones that give is not good enough. So we need to remember this phrase, because I think it's a very important phrase to follow.
I want to move to the larger Caribbean now. First, Baroness Scotland. We got a lot of people here who came from the United States. They don't know what the Secretary General of the Commonwealth does. So tell them what your responsibility is. And if you could comment particularly on, I think you were the youngest female QC in the history of the British legal system. Tell us what the impact of this kind of disaster is on women and what specifically can and should be done for women's employment and empowerment. But explain to them what your job is first.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is 53 nations, 2.4 billion people, 60% of whom are under the age of 30. We come from 6 different regions. The largest member of the Commonwealth is India, which is 1.3 billion. The smallest member of our Commonwealth is Nauru, which has 11,000. And in between, we have countries of all sizes, all natures. We have G7 countries and least developed countries. But we are bound by a number of very powerful elements. Firstly, our charter, which inculcates what we believe in, which is actually, if you look at the charter, it's the Sustainable Development Goals. We share the same language, the same common law, the same position in relation to our governance structures, because most of our countries are based on the Westminster model of government. I was actually born in the small and very beautiful island of Dominica. Dominica has about 72,000 people. So if you have 2 Dominicans in any room, there's a large percentage of our population. The Commonwealth has for many years been totally committed to climate change. The reason is that 31 of our member states are small island states. And for those small island states, climate change presents an existential threat. And a number of people thought that that threat was not real and that it was a piece of sophistry. What we saw in 2017 was the impact of climate change on all of us. We saw mudslides and desertification in Africa. We saw floods across Asia, hurricanes across the Caribbean, cyclones in the Pacific, and in America, you saw the devastation that took place. But Europe too suffered, so the whole world suffered in 2017. And when we look at who are the most vulnerable when these climatic incidents happen, it ends up being women and children. And therefore, it's incredibly important that we come together. In 1989, the Commonwealth was the first international group of countries to come together to say, this existential threat is real. And we know that if we are to make a difference, it's going to take all of us. So the Commonwealth has come together to talk about what you, Mr. President, have been talking about in this initiative. Not what do we say, but what do we now do? And it is the action that's going to make the difference. I think it was Mia Mottley, who is the Prime Minister of Barbados, who said we are the first generation to suffer the real impact of climate change, but they're the last generation to be able to do something about it. So the Commonwealth leaders came together in April of last year, 53 of them, and they committed themselves to do something about climate change. We agreed on a new Commonwealth Blue Charter and set up action groups as to what we were going to do. We committed ourselves to greater connectivity, and at a time when the world was finding it very difficult to come together and agree on anything, 53 countries, small, medium, and large, came together and they agreed on everything. But it's not enough to agree. We now have to work out what we have to do. And I really can't commend what you've said and what we've just heard. It's the doing that matters. So all of us in this room have a choice. We can, if we choose, be the difference we need to say in the world. But the question is, do we choose? I think because everyone's here, we are choosing. Because if not us, who? And if not now, when?
Thank you. Minister Barron, I thought, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Dominica, I thought it would be interesting if you heard these 2 women from this tiny island. So you will probably immediately send somebody there to see if all the female genes are suffused with genius. But anyway, for those of you who've never been there, it's not like any other island in the Caribbean, not like any other island country. There are very few, you don't see big beaches. People who go there go to see a rainforest that juts out of the Caribbean. They do have, along with the town I grew up in Arkansas, the largest hot sulfur springs available for healthy bathing of any place in our hemisphere. But it's basically a place where there's this marvelous, irreplaceable environment, but it's not your standard Caribbean vacation destination. You go there because you care about the environment. You go there because you care about rainforests. And your prime minister once said he no longer had time to argue about climate change. He was too busy living with it, which I thought was one of the great one-liners I ever heard. And so I mentioned earlier some of the things we try to do to help, but tell us where you are now. What's the difference in now and a year ago? What do you still need to do?
Thank you, President Clinton, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share with all of you. And of course, we think of Dominica as being the Garden of Eden. It is as beautiful as President Clinton has described. Of course, the hurricanes of 2017 devastated Dominica severely. And we've had a long road to recovery, and we're still in the process of recovering. But we have had two major issues that we have had to deal with in addressing the recovery process. And that has been the question of capacity, technical and human resource, and also the question of finance. We have had great strides done in restoring electricity to the island, bringing our services back online. But our Prime Minister expressed the view that, and the vision that we would make Dominica the first climate resilient nation in the world. And that is a very ambitious goal, and it's something that will take us some time to be able to achieve. But we are on the path to achieving just that. To address the capacity issue, we decided that we would establish a climate resilience execution agency for Dominica. This agency has a lifespan of 4 to 5 years. And the purpose of that agency is to develop a climate resilience recovery plan for Dominica, which has concrete steps and procedures for making Dominica resilient. And we're talking about making Dominica resilient, not just with resilient infrastructure that can withstand hurricanes and earthquakes and other natural disasters, but also making our economic systems resilient, making our environment resilient, making our social sectors resilient, looking at resilience in all its forms. That Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica has now been formed, and we have a CEO and a Chief Operating Officer as well for that agency in place now. And the CEO is actually here and will be able to share with you tomorrow some of the flagship projects that we're looking at for taking Dominica on the road to resiliency. So we have had, since the storm, we've been able to address some of the housing needs. There is, of course, 95% of homes were affected by the storm, some fully destroyed, some were affected in other ways. So it's going to be a very large and difficult challenge. But we have been moving forward with plans to improve the housing stock and to get the homes repaired. With the Climate Resilience Execution Agency will be looking at certain flagship projects that will be necessary in order to show what resiliency will look like and to show what is necessary to achieve it. Like I indicated, it's going to cost quite a lot of money to be able to achieve the resiliency that we're looking for, but we're hoping that we will develop systems and procedures for making Dominica resilient that can be replicated in other countries. We heard the Secretary General of the Commonwealth talk about 31 states that have similar challenges like Dominica does. And we're hoping that we can develop systems, procedures, toolkits that can be replicated in other countries that will be facing similar challenges as we are. What we know for sure is that climate change is real. We will have hurricanes in the future, but we do not have to suffer the same level of devastation that we did with Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma in some instances for other countries in the Caribbean region. So whilst we cannot stop the hurricanes, we can find ways to be able to mitigate and also to reduce the level of damage that is suffered as a result of it, and also to allow us to be able to recover a lot more quicker than we were able to now. So it's a collaborative effort. It's not something that Dominica alone can do on its own. It requires having the necessary expertise to advise. We need geologists, we need all sorts of experts who can advise us on what is the best way to build properly, what are the best ways of building economic resilience. And of course, the necessary funding is necessary to be able to achieve what we need to achieve. So it's a long journey, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
Mark, that leads naturally into you. When I went to Dominica, my first reaction, besides all the destruction of the buildings, was to see how the hurricanes had cut up, just blown the trees down. But the land wasn't empty. They were so thick, they were bent over, and some of them are starting to stand up again, aren't they?
That's very correct, Mr. President. The trees are green once more. Of course, there's still a lot of work that has to be done to get the forest back to what it was before, but the land is green again.
Yeah, but you didn't lose them all. I mean, it's quite amazing. And that brings me to what Expedia does, because you've helped a lot of these countries before. But about half of the island nations of the Caribbean depend on tourism for 25% or more of their GDP. That is more than twice the global average contribution of tourism to GDP. And therefore, it seems to me, if you just hear what has been said, that having a strategy that would necessarily be somewhat labor intensive to help build more resilience and incorporate sensible environmental policies and long-term responsible policies about climate change is essential to bringing back tourism and even increasing it if we do it right. So how does that relate to what you're doing and what you're thinking about this?
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, listen, I think first of all, I think the question is, what is the role of private enterprise in all of this? And I think a lot is said, or questions asked around, is private enterprise set for profit, or is private enterprise more than that? And for Expedia, it's more than that. We've got an initiative called Expedia Cares, which really empowers our employees and also underscores a number of initiatives across Expedia Group to make sure that we do involve ourselves in the community and involves ourselves in initiatives like those that we are involved in right here. Our support of the Caribbean countries goes sort of well beyond what we can do from a travel and tourism perspective. We partnered up with Construction for Change and the Sexton Foundation to actually help install solar panels in Dominica so that that country, if there is another disaster, and I hope there's not, but I suspect there could be, can actually get up and running and can actually have the foundation to rebuild. We did that because at the time, there really wasn't much more we could do, but we needed to do something. We needed to have a bias to action. So we continue to work on such infrastructure projects, not only there, but also in St. John, St. Thomas. But importantly, our primary role, again, is to help get the tourism industry flowing again. So we teamed up with the Tourism Authority of Puerto Rico very early on and helped promote Puerto Rico as a destination to our 675 million eyeballs that visit Expedia Group websites every single month, with slogans like, travel to Puerto Rico is caring for Puerto Rico. Really making sure that the world was aware that Puerto Rico needs them to come and visit. maybe to help, but also to see the amazing sights that Puerto Rico offers. We've been working with really all of the Caribbean nations in a pan-Caribbean effort to help promote the Caribbean area in totality as a destination, so that customers, travelers who want to come to the Caribbean and maybe read something about the news don't get scared away because Dominica isn't available and go to Hawaii, but rather they continue to think of the Caribbean as being a place where they can go, and maybe not Dominica this time, maybe Jamaica this time, but nonetheless it stays top of mind. And I think this is very important. Here we stand about 18 months after the disaster. The Caribbean in total has gotten back to where it was in 2016 levels, but has not yet returned to growth. And places like Puerto Rico, where 25% of the hotels are still under renovation, I think we're going to be a ways away. And one of the big problems is that customers change travel patterns. Airlines change airline routes. And we view it as one of our responsibilities as one of the leaders in travel to make sure that we do our best to keep places like Dominica and places like the Caribbean top of mind for travelers. And we also make sure that we participate with our airline partners so that they know if they build new routes, we will absolutely fill them.
So I'll just do the first follow-up with you. Let's just keep going. So in 2019, based on what you just said, what are some of the things you could do, and what are some of the things that all these people could do to reinforce your effort that would increase the likelihood of people knowing about options to travel to all the places that were hurt?
Well, I think importantly, work with players like us who have huge audiences that can get the message out. In many cases, smaller countries don't have a loud enough voice, but work together across all of the tourism authorities to actually help promote tourism together is one thing. If you're in the travel industry, again, if you're in tourism, whether you run a hotel, whether you are one of the airline partners, again, make sure that you're doing your best to work together to create packages or opportunities that could be attractive to consumers. We have to get the word out there that the Caribbean is still open for business, and we have to keep it top of mind.
It's very interesting. I've often thought that, at least since I actually got to go to Dominica and see it, that it ought to be packaged with people going on more traditional vacations in other places. But come spend a couple of days here. You'll never see anything like it. You've never seen anything like it before. You'll never see anything like it again. Just give it a couple of days. And it's not inconsistent with the economic and other interests of the other islands. Of all the places in the Caribbean, you could package it with any of the other places, I think.
No, I think it's very important. And if you look at what some of the other organizations are doing around the world, whether it's Thailand, whether it's Visit Britain, whether it's Tour France, they, because they have multiple destinations all under one umbrella, are working with people like ourselves to promote secondary and tertiary locations, to say, yes, come to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower, but why not go to the Loire Valley and do some wine tasting for a day? I think this is a huge opportunity for the Caribbean region. There are so many amazing places that maybe people don't think about them. Maybe they think, hey, I'm just going to go to Barbados or somewhere else for a week. I think the opportunity is much greater to actually go and spend a day in some of these smaller, amazing places around the Caribbean. I think it's a huge opportunity.
Madam Foreign Minister, give us a couple of examples of, you say you want to be the first truly sustainable country in the world. So what are you doing to accelerate your transformation to clean energy, and what else are you doing? What about new building standards? What about new building materials? What other things are you doing?
Well, one of the things that we are doing in terms of energy is developing our geothermal potential. Right now, we have about 20% of our power supply that is powered by hydro, and we will be starting the construction of a geothermal plant this year. That will, with that and the hydro, will be able to be almost 100% reliable on just clean energy. So that's very significant for us. And we also would want to move at some point to introducing electric cars to Dominica as well, so that we can reduce our consumption of fossil fuels. We are also looking at different ways in which to build our structures. The hurricane exposed the weaknesses that we had with our buildings. And a new building code has been developed, and that is being used for the reconstruction effort moving forward. We're seeking to build our structures a lot stronger than we've had in the past, and that goes for our housing as well as for structures such as bridges. And for example, our bridges are being built higher, they're being built with a longer span, and we're also paying attention to ensuring that we have a dredging schedule so that our many rivers will not result in flooding in the event of heavy rainfall. So we're seeking to look at the areas where we had vulnerabilities and looking at how best to address those vulnerabilities. One of the things that we've had to look at as well is, where do we give people permission to build? The challenge with Dominica is that we have lovely mountains, we have lots of rivers and lakes, and we are, of course, an island. So you have the challenges of either landslides or flooding or storm surge. So, and we don't have lots of flat land because we're very mountainous. But there are things that we can do to reduce our vulnerabilities. And one of those is looking at how close do we build to rivers. Can we do some slope stabilization to ensure that there is less landslips when there is when there's a storm? And we're looking at different ways of doing things, which is why I said one of the things that we have to look at is having the necessary technical expertise to advise us. This place is not safe to build because of the geology of the area or the hydrology. Based on hydrology information, it's not the safest place to build. So we're trying to incorporate that in everything that we do. The CREED agency that we have developed is also going to be staffed with experts in different areas that can advise us on new projects that we're involved in, so that we ensure that if there's an earthquake that hits us in the future, our buildings can stand up because they have met the standards for earthquake resistance, that they can withstand the hurricane. Do we use, for example, we had a lot of roof damage with Hurricane Maria. We've changed the way that we do our roofs. We've changed the style of the roofs. We use a better grade of galvanized. We use more screws. We use different purloins and so on. So there are ways in which you can reduce your vulnerability, and that is what we're targeting.
Jose, you saw what a nice round of applause you got when you talked before. You could have just stayed with this thing you do, which is almost magical, feeding people when they need to be fed and being able to grow the effort exponentially. But you didn't do that. You see food as a global security issue, a global political issue, a global health issue, a global education issue. And yesterday, you had Hillary and me tromping out in the mud at one of your farm partners. This amazingly impressive young farm couple who basically said they wanted to bring the idea of the Internet of Things to small farmers. A bright young man telling us with a straight face that little family farmers could be just as productive as big ones because of technology. And you did this. So over the long run, what you're doing with the food chain may touch more lives than all the people you fed in emergency. So tell them basically, what are you trying to do and why?
Before I answer you, Mr. President, That's what happens when you live in Washington, D.C., and you learn from the politicians. But before I answer you, I wanted to add about the rebuilding. We said after Katrina that we will learn about how to rebuild, and seems the same problems of the past keep repeating themselves. And me, I love always to see the successes. If anybody remembers that very powerful photo in Florida on Mexico Beach, where hundreds of homes that were flying away, but in the middle of the beach, in the front line where the hurricane came through, was this one home that was untouched and survived the hurricane. If I was the head of FEMA, if I was rebuilding my country, I will find out who was the architect and the builder of that home, and I will repeat that success all over the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, because that was a true success. Do you remember the photo? You seem so quiet. You remember the photo? That's the type of successes we have to keep repeating. So anyway, that was the little point I was doing. Also, you mentioned private sector. And Mr. President, I really want to thank the amazing work that the private sector did in Puerto Rico. They are, to me, the unsung heroes. But what happened is that the private sector and government and FEMA and agencies, they had a hard time sometimes, it feels, communicating to each other. But you asked me about how we had food in the island. I had food to cook. I was not bringing the food from anywhere. The private sector had plenty of food to keep feeding the island. The only thing we had to go to them to tell them, hey, can you provide me with the food? So many of the solutions, sometimes they are already there, provided by the private sector. So again, I was so proud of the work they really did. So going back to your question on believing that we need to give more importance to food. Was this French philosopher, and I never quote French people publicly, I mean, I'm a chef, that in 1826 he said, tell me what you eat and I'll tell you who you are. But he had a more powerful phrase. He said, the future of the nations will depend in how they feed themselves. So what we're doing, for example, in Puerto Rico, World Central Kitchen is investing in the small farmers, making sure that we dream of a Puerto Rico that right now imports 90% of the foods they consume, to make sure that one day they will dream of cutting that by half. How we do that? By investing in farmers, by making sure that this island can be productive. So the farm you visited yesterday, Mr. President, we did nothing. We only became a little wind in the sail. They're here. They only need sometimes help from people like you, help from NGOs like ours, that we recognize their talent. And by doing a little grant, a little investment, we can put them up and flying. So this last year, we did close to 35 farms, between farms and fishing co-ops, etc. And World Central Kitchen, and thanks to your amazing initiative, Mr. President, we're going to be committing over, so last year we put like $500 million more or less for 35 farms, but over the next few years we're going to be committing, with help of partners like you, $4 million to make sure that we will impact at least over 200 farms across the island. That's our little commitment to CGI and to the people of Puerto Rico. Believing that farming is what is going to give resilience to places like Puerto Rico, islands in your Commonwealth, in Dominica, and places around the world. We need the big farmers, but also we need a very good, smart infrastructure, small farmers that will be spread all over. That's the way to bring food resilience, one community at a time, one island at a time, one country at a time.
That is a good segue to the question I want to ask Madam Secretary General. But before we go, the reason I wanted you to talk about the small farmer thing is that it has two huge applications beyond the island nations affected by the storm. One is food is more expensive in island nations almost invariably than it is in big land-based nations that aren't islands because of the transportation costs. One of the real controversies we have in Puerto Rico now is that the average meal costs 10% more here than it does in the mainland, and since you're a part of the United States, the food assistance program is smaller per person here than on the mainland. It doesn't make a lick of sense. So if there were more productive small farmers, a higher percentage of the food consumed would be grown here, and it would be more affordable for people, and also, in all probability, fresher, and if subject to certain standards, as or more nutritious. The other big problem, here's something what you're doing here could help the rest of the world, and this leads me into my last question to the Secretary General. One of the big problems the world's going to have with climate change threatening the viability of certain farmland, the population growing, and already a fair number of countries with plenty of money who can't feed themselves, led by Saudi Arabia because of the desert, and China because so much of the farmland, perfectly good farmland, was destroyed from chemical pollutants. Is you got all these countries that are going to be walking around with a lot of money, going to countries that aren't so rich, saying, can I buy your farmland? Can I lease your farmland? And the risk is that they'll throw all these small farmers off the land and come in and over-till the soil. It'll be gone in 2 years, and you'll have you and I may or may not be around, but it'll be a cataclysm sometime in the next 50 years if we don't deal with it. So this is something, again, where doing this food chain business and getting the supply chains right can have benefits beyond anything you even imagine right now.
And it's a national security issue, as you well know, Mr. President, in the sense, for example, when I was in Tijuana recently, I learned farmers in Honduras, they were losing their crops because a fungus was killing every plant. The reason they were in Tijuana is because nobody was helping them provide them a simple fungicide that will help them protect their coffee plants. When they lost their entire crops and waiting for the next 3 years until the next coffee plants will be ready, they had to go to the place that they felt they could be finding a job. Having a very strong farming community in countries around the world, especially surrounding America, is in the best interest of national security. Instead of building walls that don't achieve much, because if hungry people are hungry, they're gonna jump over the wall. The best, most smart investment for America or any country will be making sure that the surrounding countries do as well as you do. If they do well, you will never have anybody waiting in your borders to come in. Why? Because they will be thriving one farm community at a time. That's why farms are such an important national security issue, and we need to take it seriously. United States and every other single country on the face of earth. That's the only way forward. Not investing in walls, but investing in farms that will feed the world. That's the true way forward.
Now, that also affects some of the countries in the Commonwealth. There are, we have a program in Africa with about 165,000 small farms. Aliko then know that in Nigeria has about 180,000. And there's one other big conglomerate there. But every place we go, these people can produce a food surplus, get a fair price with basic organizational. You just have to do it. And that's before. I think your young man yesterday, I think I'm going to put him up all over the world and let him explain to people how he's going to create the Internet of Things for agriculture. So I wanted to give you a chance to close because you have the broadest perspective because of your job. What do you think the most important changes, I'm familiar with the Blue Plan, and what are the most important things that you have personally seen that are happening that you think have relevance to this area and to the rest of the world? What have you actually seen going on the ground that you think can make a big difference?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think what I see is this, that human genius got us into this mess, and human genius is going to get us out. What has happened in the last couple of years, driven by initiatives such as this and these and many others, is that we are coming together, all the disciplines, in a multidisciplinary way to really understand what building back better means. What do we have to do? We are developing a regenerative model of development, which does not just mean looking at our oceans and our land and our air. It also means looking at our people and how do we make that resilience real. And so what I've seen is across the Commonwealth, there are some amazing innovations, some quite extraordinary, successful pools of knowledge, but we have not shared that knowledge. And we have to do that better. So what I have seen is the coming together of nations to make that difference. We in the Commonwealth have created the Office of Civil and Criminal Justice Reform. Out of that, we're creating a climate change toolkit, a legal toolkit. How do we make the laws that make the difference? But we've also created an innovation hub. And from that innovation hub, we see that we have to make space for a community of practitioners, the biomimicrysts, those who are doing circular economy, symbiotic economy, the oceanologists, all of us, to come together in a concrete way and have plans that will make the difference we seek. And that's why we have been concentrating on action groups. No longer looking at what we say, but creating toolkits to help each of us do the things that we need, whether it's getting agriculture more engaged, using our blue oceans better, learning how to build buildings in a way that makes them truly sustainable. And this community is really starting to take shape. And so what I see as being absolutely pivotal for us is we've got to connect the scientists with the money, with the implementers, and it has to be one multi-agency action plan. I think we can do that, and we're doing it now. In the Commonwealth, we are looking at creating a Commonwealth Implementation Fund. We have 43 implementation toolkits, because it's also about good governance. If we are going to do this, we're going to have to know how to implement. So I will say that what I've seen and what is really important is implementation, 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 and action. And I do believe we can do this because we have the knowledge. We just have to choose to share it, use it, and implement it.
Wow.
I think we can do it.
Wow. And if you believe in it, with permission of the Mirandas and Hamilton, this is the room where it happens, the room where it happens, and you guys, you know, you can make it happen.
Real quick, I know we got to go. Aren't they great? Are you having a good time? They're good, huh?
I just made $20.
So, Madam Foreign Minister, so if someone came up to you after this meeting and said, I'm going to give you $2 million, what would you spend it on?
There are so many options for the spending of that. But one of the most important things is building economic resilience. And I think that $2 million could be used to help young women and the youth, to direct them to and provide support to them in their businesses. Many of our households in Dominica are headed by women. and many of them are involved in small and medium-sized enterprises. And they require a lot of support. And I think those funds could be very helpful to them, provide them with the technical advice and support that they need, and provide them as well with the finances to be able to improve their businesses and be able to become more sustainable. And of course, the needs are very varied. For us to be able to achieve a resilient nation, it's going to take a lot of hard work, it's going to take a lot of years, it's going to take a lot of resources, both financial, technical, and otherwise. But I think Dominica stands in a place now where we can be an example to the rest of the world in what it means to be resilient, to become sustainable. I think we have the ideal opportunity now that there's a willpower of the government. There is the desire to become resilient, and I think that all of us here can participate in that process. We're open to ideas, to private, public partnerships, to the involvement of all in order to allow us to achieve that goal. And we are quite willing to be able to share those experiences with others in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, in the Indian Ocean, other small island developing states that have similar challenges. So we invite everybody to be part of our process of becoming a resilient nation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Real quick. So you can have all these people, these potential tourists, see these things about all these countries. It's great, but a lot of them need to rebuild their tourist facilities. Is there an organized effort now for anybody that's going to build anything in the Caribbean to use much more resilient materials and designs? I mean, do the governments have to have standards, or is the industry basically saying you have to do this or you're going to waste your owner's money?
Well, not as far as I'm aware of. I think it's an important opportunity that I think we can highlight, and obviously this group is the ones that could probably put it into place. There is another conference actually going on right now in the Dominican Republic with essentially the tourism authorities and hotel associations across the Caribbean. I think it's a great call out, not only for the Caribbean region, but for the globe. We do have something called the World Travel Tourism Council that I'm a part of. We're meeting in Spain, Seville, Spain, in April. I think I'll raise it with them.
Thank you all. You were great. Let's give them a hand.